Hello, everyone, and welcome to another class on endocrinology. I'm Dr. Swati Tikare, and in today's class, we will learn about synthesis and regulation of thyroid hormones as per the CBME curriculum with reference to competencies and objectives. So, we are going through a long objective that is 8.2 and competency 8.2. And with this, today's objectives are uh, of the thyroid gland. Describe the functional anatomy of thyroid gland. Describe the structure, biosynthesis, transport, and metabolism of thyroid hormones. Role of iodine. Describe the regulation of thyroid hormones. And lastly, describe the actions of thyroid stimulating hormone. So today's class is a very important one. Let's begin with the functional anatomy of thyroid gland. So as you all know, the thyroid gland is a butterfly-shaped structure that is present in the anterior part of the neck. Okay, so it overlies the trachea, and you can see two lobes, right and the left lobe, which is connected in the middle with an isthmus. Sometimes there is an additional lobe in the center, which goes up here like this, and it is called as the pyramidal lobe. So above we have the thyroid cartilage and the larynx. A simpler diagram would look something like this. Okay, so you can easily draw this diagram. First, draw the thyroid gland, then the trachea, then draw the thyroid cartilage and the larynx. Okay, so let's see the histological view of this thyroid gland. So we'll be able to see these way. These are called follicles. You can see the cells lined up as circles. In the center, there is a substance called the colloid, and these are the cells. So if we see further in detail, you can see there are two types of cells here lining the colloid or the follicles. Okay, each one of them is a follicle. So these are the follicular cells. The follicular cells, you can see the apices, how they are. And in addition, there are one more type of cells, that is the parafollicular cells, okay, or also called as the C cells. So today's for us, the important cells are the follicular cells, which are were responsible for the secretion of the thyroid hormones. The parafollicular cells are related to calcium homeostasis. It produces another hormone called calcitonin. Okay, we will not do anything about it right now. So this is the histology. So once it is inactive, when the thyroid gland is inactive, it is not actively producing the hormones. This is how it looks. The cells are flattened and a lot of colloid is there. Okay. Whereas when they become active, they are actively producing, secreting, synthesizing, and releasing the thyroid hormones. This is how they look. The follicular cells are so much enlarged, and this is how it looks when it is active. Okay. So now let's move on to the physiology of it, how it is synthesized, and all that. Before that, let's have a look at what are the hormones that are produced basically by the thyroid gland. The thyroid hormones include two biologically active substances. That is, first one is the tetraiodothyronin. Okay, so tetraiodo at four places it is iodinized. Tetraiodothyronin T4. This is what is usually called as thyroxine. Okay, the next hormone that is produced is triiodothyronin. That means it is iodized at three places. We'll see all the details. It is called T3. So T4 and T3 are the important hormones that we call together as thyroid hormones. So it is derived from a modification of the amino acid tyrosine. A lot of T4 is produced than T3, and T4 is later converted into T3. Okay? But it is T3 that is more metabolically active. T3 is more metabolically active. At the tissues, T4 gets converted to T3. Thus, T4 also we can say it acts as a pre-hormone or pro-hormone. So more of T4 is produced, less of T3. But when they go into the tissues, T4 gets converted into T3, and the T3 is one which is metabolically active and performs all the more functions of the thyroid hormone, what we know as the actions of thyroid hormones. So T4 also has some functions, but it can also be termed as a T hormone. Okay, coming to the structure. Okay, two tyrosine molecules combine, and once they are iodinated, the tyrosine molecules are iodinated and combined, they form the T4 hormone. We will go to the synthesis in detail, but you can see, please note the structure of the T4. So this is draw a benzene ring. So this is at the 3' and 5'. OH is there. At 3' and 5' it is iodinated both the places. O again one more benzene ring. At 3 and 5 again they are iodinated. CH2, CH, COOH, NH2. So this is the structure of a T4, that is thyroxine hormone. Next, let's see how the T3 structure looks like. So you can see that in T3, it is iodinated at 3 and 5 positions and at 3' position. So this is 3', 3, 5 iodinated, but 5' is not iodinated. So this is the structure of T3, a triiodothyronine. Next, once T4 is converted to T3, sometimes instead of T3, another structure is formed that is called as reverse T3. Okay. So you can see this reverse T3 is nothing but 3', 5' is both iodinated. In T3, 3, 5 were both iodinated. Only 3' was iodinated. Okay. But here in reverse T3, 3', 5' is iodinated. 5 is left. It's not iodinated. Okay. So it is 3', 5', 3, 3', 5' iodinated triiodothyronine. That would be reverse T3 or RT3, and it is metabolically inactive. It does not have any biologically important functions. Those some of the research is still going on. At present, we did not know anything much about it. Next, let's know about the role of iodine. So since the tyrosine is important and it is iodinated, so iodine becomes important here. In its absence, adequate iodine intake, either in the diet or in water or any other, is required for normal thyroid hormone production. What are the major sources of iodine? So now we all are using only iodized salt. Non-iodized, in the absence of this iodized salt long back, there were a lot of cases which resulted in iodine deficiency and thus the thyroid hormone deficiency, leading to many conditions called goiter, which we will learn later. Okay, but now the government has made it compulsory that all salt is iodized. So iodized salt is a major source of iodine for all of us, and dairy products and seafood contain, they are rich in iodine. The minimum requirement for the proper thyroid hormone form synthesis is 150 micrograms per day in an adult. Whereas with the, as I was telling, the use of iodized salt has increased our normal intake to 200 to 500 micrograms per day at present. It is there. So the condition of deficiency has been reduced to a great extent. Okay. So remember one more thing, iodine is no doubt important, essential for thyroid function, but both deficiency and excess iodine inhibits the thyroid function. So it is not useful to have either excess or be deficient in the iodine. Both are detrimental. So we will start with the important topic, that is thyroid hormone synthesis, storage, and secretion, how it is happening. So as I told you earlier, the thyroid hormone synthesis is happening within these thyroid follicles. Okay, so thyroid follicles, we have the follicular cells, then the colloid inside. The periphery, the blood vessels will be running. So let's see more in detail about this structure and how the synthesis happens. So first we will see in brief. Okay. Initially, if we go very much in detail, it will be difficult. Which we learn the steps in brief, then we will learn in the next slide little more details about it. Okay. So going through the first step, let me first describe this figure here. So these are our follicular cells. Okay, a section of the follicular cell. Then inside is the colloid here. Okay, on the periphery, outer part of the follicle, the blood vessels are running. Okay, so this is a part picture of the colloid or the follicle, thyroid follicle we have taken. Okay, for better understanding. So what is the first step? First step is the synthesis of thyroglobulin. Okay, so the tyrosine and the globulin contained together. Thyroglobulin is synthesized. Where is it synthesized? It is protein synthesis. It happens in the endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, and the thyroglobulin is synthesized and it is released, secreted into the colloid. Okay, so the thyroglobulin synthesized and released into the colloid. First step. Second step is, so all the factory for synthesis is the colloid. So all that we need for synthesis of thyroid hormones should come and reach this colloid. Okay. So the next step is trapping iodide or uptake of iodide. So where is this iodide? It is present in the blood. Okay. So the iodide is enters inside this follicle. Okay. And this iodide is again pushed inside. From the follicular cell, it moves into the colloid. Okay. So our two important things required for the synthesis of thyroid hormone are now present within the colloid. So what will happen here? The third step will be oxidation of iodide to iodine. Okay, so the iodide itself is not useful. It is oxidized first to iodine. Then fourth step is iodination of thyroglobulin. That means this iodine gets incorporated into the thyroglobulin. Okay, tyrosine, which was not iodinated, it becomes iodinated. Once it becomes iodinated, it forms two structures. Okay, first, if it is iodinated at one place, it forms monoiodothyronine. Okay, MIT. Okay, it doesn't stand for Mastitis Institute. It stands for monoiodothyronine. And when it is iodinated at two places, it forms diiodothyronine. Once monoiodothyronine and diiodothyronine are formed, there will be a coupling reaction. Okay, so the MIT and DIT will combine, or two molecules of DIT will combine, and accordingly, either T4, if two molecules of DIT are combining, it forms T4. If MIT and DIT combines, it forms T3. Okay, so once they are formed, they are not free yet. They are remaining attached to the thyroglobulin. Okay, in the same fashion, they will enter here, and here you can see that this is the thyroglobulin along with T3, T4, everything is together. Afterwards, the enzymes act on it, lysosomal enzymes. They splice them, and T3, T4 is released, and they go back into the blood. Okay. So this is the basic way in which the thyroid hormone synthesis happens. In the next slide, we will see the details of how each one is happening. Okay, so I hope you are clear. You'll be much clearer with the next steps. I will not revise here. We will go to the next slide where the revision, one more revision we will have. Okay, so this is the very same picture. You need not draw the diagram once again, or if you want, you can draw it also, but don't get overwhelmed with the very colorful diagram. Okay, so we basically have the same things. We have the capillary here. This is called the basolateral side. This is a big follicular cell. Okay, this is the apical end of the follicular cell. This is the colloid. Okay, so we begin with the first step. The first step was synthesis of thyroglobulin, right? Thyroglobulin is synthesized here by the Golgi apparatus and rough endoplasmic reticulum, and it is released into the colloid. Okay, first step. Second step, we said iodide is entering from the blood vessel into the follicular cell. How does it happen? It happens by sodium iodide symporter. Okay, so there is a carrier protein here. Okay, so there is a carrier protein here. When it is taking sodium inside, it is taking iodine also along with it. That is, it is a secondary active transport. Okay, so somewhere else sodium potassium, I will not tell in detail what is secondary active transport here, but just remember it receives, if it's secondary active transport means it is getting the energy for transport via some other uh, transport that is happening, which is the active transport. Okay, so coming back to this second step, iodide enters into the follicular cell by sodium iodide symporter. And remember that it can be the amount of iodide that can be, it is not a simple gradient, concentration gradient that it is allowing. A lot, 30 to 40 times more sodium get, more iodide gets trapped by active mechanism here. Okay, so a lot of iodide that is available from the blood is taken and concentrated within the follicular cell. You know, this, there are two variants which they say. One, they say that the oxidation, that is the iodide is converted into iodine within the follicular cell. But we will follow the second way where it is happening outside in the colloid. So for us, the second step, once the iodide has entered from NIS into the follicular cell, the iodide is transported to the colloid, by which mechanism? Chloride iodide exchanger. Okay, a molecule of chlorine will come inside and iodide will go into the colloid, that is named as pendrin. Okay, so through NIS, sodium iodide symporter, it enters from the blood into the follicular cell. Now, from the follicular cell, the iodide is moving into the colloid space by this pendrin. Okay, what is the third step? Now, the third step is oxidation of iodide to iodine. So, within the colloid, the iodide is getting converted to iodine. The fourth step is the incorporation of this iodine into the thyroglobulin. Okay, iodination of thyroglobulin. So the tyrosine becomes iodinated at one place. It forms monoiodothyronine, or at two places, 3 and 5, diiodothyronine. Okay, so it may be mono or diiodothyronine. So this is the fourth step. Now coming to the fifth step. Fifth step is the coupling reaction. So what is coupling reaction? The combination of two molecules. One is the MIT and other is DIT, or it can be two molecules of DIT that are combining. Okay. So accordingly, either T4 is formed, DIT plus DIT forms T4, and MIT plus DIT forms T3, whereas the reverse DIT plus MIT, okay, DIT plus MIT forms reverse T3. Okay, so all this is happening within the folder. But remember, it still is not freely separated out. Okay, it is in combination like a long protein, okay, in association with the thyroglobulin. So our T3, T4 hormones are ready now along with an inactive reverse T3 some amount is ready in the colloid. So now what happens? This whole thing, okay? So you can see the T4 and T3, they are still attached big structures. This whole thing is endocytosed. Okay? It forms like a cavity, and it forms like a cavity and it gets enclosed and enters into the follicles. Okay, this is how it forms. Thyroglobulin colloid is endocytosed and combined with a lysosome. Okay, so the lysosome combines with this follicle, endocytosed colloid. Okay. Now the job of the lysosome is what happens in the next step. The lysosomal enzymes cleave T3 and T4. Okay, they release the free T3, T4 here outside from the thyroglobulin colloid, and hormones diffuse from the follicle into the bloodstream. Remember, T3 and T4 hormones are something similar to steroid hormones. They are lipophilic. Okay, they are lipophilic, so they can easily cross the cell membrane and they can enter the bloodstream. Okay, so this is how the synthesis of thyroid hormone happens in a stepwise manner within the colloid and then enters the follicle and goes to the blood. Okay, so quickly recapping, first step is synthesis of thyroglobulin by the Golgi apparatus and rough endoplasmic reticulum. Second step, iodide enters from the capillary into the follicular cell via sodium iodide symporter. This iodide is again further transported into the colloid by chloride iodine exchanger, that is pendrin. Now, thyroglobulin, the third step is oxidation of iodide to iodine. Okay. Now, the fourth step is the thyroglobulin is already available, the iodination of thyroglobulin. Okay. So, with iodination of thyroglobulin, what all structures are formed? Either monoiodothyronine or diiodothyronine are formed. Next, these two structures form cupping. Okay. If two molecules of DIT combine, they form T4. If one DIT combines with one MIT, it forms T3. If monoiodothyronine plus DIT, then it forms reverse T3. So like this, the T3 and T4 hormones are formed, but still they remain attached to the colloid. Okay, so the colloid, some other substances are also there. Overall, the whole of colloid can be called as a glycoprotein. Okay, so it is remained attached. Now the entire T3, T4 along with the thyroglobulin, the colloid, everything gets endocytosed and forms a uh, follicle here. Not a follicle, but it forms a enclosure with the hormones. Along with it comes the lysosome enzyme. Now the lysosome enzyme next splices the T3, T4 and releases into the follicles. And this T3, T4 being lipophilic, they will just pass through and released into the capillary. So this is how the synthesis of thyroid hormones happen. So let's see how much and more details. So every single day, about 80 micrograms of T4 is formed and 4 micrograms of T3 is formed per day. Okay, all these values which I'll be telling you right now are important and you need to remember them. Okay, so for some hormones, definitely you have to remember the normal values. So this is one of the important ones. Next, coming to once they are released into the blood, how are they transported? Okay, how are they transported? That's transported in two forms. As usual, either in the bound form or in the free form. Remember, majority of it, 99.9% of it is transported in the bound form. You know, in the free form, it will have its action only when it reaches the target organ. Usually it is, and as and when it is in the free form, it will have more actions. As and when it is required, it will be released from the uh, transport, sorry, from the binding proteins. Okay, so let's look into the transport now. Total bound form for T4, it is 8 microgram per deciliter. Okay, this is per day when we are telling, and this is we are talking in terms of per deciliter. Okay, this is in the plasma values. Normal plasma value of T4 in bound form or total is 8 microgram per deciliter, whereas for T3 it is 0.15 microgram per deciliter. Next, free form in the plasma, T4 is 2 nanogram per deciliter. Look at the uh, units. This was microgram, this is nanogram. If I had put this in also in microgram, this would come 0.002 nanogram. Okay, so make it simple. I have put it in nanogram. So free T4 is 2 nanogram per deciliter. That means a very, very minute point. That's what I was telling you. 99.9% of all thyroid hormone is in the bound form. Very little is in the free form. Okay, so the free T4 is 2 nanogram per deciliter, whereas T3 0.3 nanogram per deciliter is in the free form. So as I was repeating, free form are physiologically active. They can have their actions, and these are the ones. Okay, two things are important about the free hormones. First thing, that these are the ones which bring about the physiological action in the body on the target organs. Second, these free hormone level are the ones which bring about the feedback to inhibit the TSH or TRH at the pituitary and hypothalamic level. Okay, free hormones. Next, some more factors about T3, T4. So already you know T3, T4 are lipid soluble. Coming to the thyroid binding proteins. So we said that 99% and more are bound to the proteins. They are bound form. So which are these proteins to which they bind? So there are three proteins to which they bind, the T3 and T4 hormones. The first one is thyroid hormone binding globulin. Okay, thyroid hormone binding globulin. 70% of all hormone is bound to this one, and T4 binds to this more than T3. Okay, the affinity of T4 to this protein globulin is more. The next binding protein is albumin, which is about 15% of all binding protein, and T3 has more affinity to this. Okay, albumin. The last binding protein is free albumin, also called as transthyretin. Again, about 15% of the hormones are bound to this. Both T4 and T3 have minimal uh, affinity to this binding protein. Okay, so these are the binding proteins to which they bind and they are transported until they reach the target organ. So once we finish their work on we will discuss the actions of thyroid hormones in another class. But once they are done with their job, how are they metabolized, the thyroid hormones? So basically, we said more of T4 is there, but T3 is having more biological activity. So T4 is actually deionized in the various tissues, okay, wherever it is required. So T4 is deionized to T3 in liver, kidney, brain, etc. by different deiodenase. So this is one way of metabolism. And whatever T3 is formed that is conjugated to sulfates and glucuronide in the liver. Okay. So most of the metabolism of any substance, whether it's a drug, hormone, or many substances, happens either in the liver or in the spleen. Okay. So these are the places where the metabolism is happening. Next, how do this thyroid hormones act? Coming to the mechanism of action of thyroid hormones. So I want you to take about 10 seconds and recall how do the thyroid hormones act. So remember we had learned peptide hormones, then catecholamines and thyroid hormones, and then the steroid hormones. What is the mechanism of action based on their solubility? If they are lipophilic, how it happens. If it is lipophobic, what happens? So thyroid hormones are lipophilic. They can easily enter into the cells, their target cells. So where should the receptors be? Obviously, the receptors are intracellular. So the mechanism of action of thyroid hormones is very similar to the steroid hormones. So this was the diagram which you had learned for the mechanism of action of steroid hormones, which is very similar here. The thyroid hormone will enter easily into the target cell, binds with the receptor there, thyroid receptor, and then the thyroid receptor and hormone complex will enter into the nucleus, bind to a specific segment of DNA. Accordingly, a particular mRNA coding a particular protein will be produced. This mRNA will get enter the cytoplasm, where in the cytoplasm, the endoplasmic reticulum will help in producing this new protein. Okay, and this will bring about the actions. Okay, so this is the mechanism of action of thyroid hormones, very similar to steroids. Next, we will move on to regulation of thyroid hormone. Okay, so the two main concepts for regulation now. First, remember, iodide we said was very important. So iodine is more or less will definitely impact the regulation of production of thyroid hormone. Then second one is which you already know by hormonal mechanisms, the pituitary, hypothalamo pituitary thyroid axis. Okay, so these will be the two ways. Autoregulation mechanism, which regulates based on the levels of iodine. Second, regulation by hypothalamus and anterior pituitary. Okay, let's see how the iodine regulates the thyroid hormone first. So, autoregulation by iodide. So, the rate of iodine uptake is influenced by the amount of iodide available. Okay, so let's say if there is low iodide levels, what happens? Okay, we need some minimum amount of iodide for the formation of thyroid hormones. This you already know now. So whenever there are low iodide levels, what happens is there is increase in the iodide transporters. Okay. Increase iodine transport in the follicular cell. That is what is called as increased sensitivity. Okay. Lower the iodide. That means less is there. Quickly I will employ more carrier proteins and draw more iodide. That's how it happens. So when there is low iodide, there is increased sensitivity and they try to trap all the iodine that is possible. Whereas if there is high iodine level in the body, in the blood, okay, it doesn't want all the iodine to come inside and excess to be formed. So what does the body do? It decreases the iodine transport into the follicular cells. Okay, when high iodide levels are there, it decreases the iodine transport. This is called as Wolff-Chaikoff effect. Okay, Wolff-Chaikoff effect. So that means there is decreased sensitivity. So it's a very simple process. Whenever more is available, it reduces. And when less is available, it increases so that optimum amount of iodide is entering into the thyroid follicles. So there is a negative feedback regulation of iodide transport. So the availability of iodide itself is regulated so that the total outcome of how much thyroid hormones are formed will also be regulated. Okay, this is one mechanism regulated by iodine. Second mechanism is the hormonal mechanism. This diagram I know you are very familiar with by now. So you know hypothalamus releases thyrotropin releasing hormone. Okay. How does this thyrotropin releasing hormone act on anterior pituitary? How does it come here? I hope you can recall. It comes via the vascular to the portal vessels and reaches here to the anterior pituitary. Acts on the thyrotropes, right? So several different types of cells are there in the anterior pituitary. It acts on the thyrotropes to release the hormone TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone or thyrotropin. Then this TSH, we will learn little more detail about TSH in our next slides. TSH is stimulatory on the thyroid gland. It is tropic on the thyroid gland. Okay, and it causes the release and synthesis, all activation and release of the T3 and T4 hormones. Okay. Later, the T3 and T4 hormones will bring about a physiological effect. Whereas the T3 and T4 free form of T3 and T4, they can have a negative feedback mechanism on anterior pituitary. They inhibit the TSH. They also inhibit the TRH. Okay, so this is the long loop, short loop, negative feedback mechanism. You all know all this. In addition to this, we have some other factors which act directly on the hypothalamus. Whenever there is warmth, okay, that means heat, temperature is more, there is stress, there is anxiety, all this will inhibit the release of TRH or the hypothalamus. Okay, this will inhibit. Whereas cold temperature will stimulate the hypothalamus to release TRH. Okay, so this is a very simple mechanism by which the release of thyroid hormones are regulated. In addition, the day-to-day regulation feedback of T3, T4 hormones occurs between T3, T4 and TSH. Okay, only in exceptional conditions, this long pathway is involved. Okay, otherwise it is the short loop mechanism, which is more important for day-to-day regulation of T3 and T4 hormones. So let's have a short overview over this particular hormone, that is the thyroid stimulating hormone. Because if we learn this hormone in relation to thyroid hormones here, it is more easy than learning all these anterior pituitary hormones, the TSH, ACTH, everything together in under anterior pituitary. Okay, wherever the relation is, we will learn little bit about these hormones. So the anterior pituitary hormone here is the TSH, produced by thyrotropes of anterior pituitary. You know that TSH is a glycoprotein hormone made up of 221 amino acids. It consists of two subunits. Okay, this is a bit interesting to know. That is, it is having one alpha subunit, which is common to LH, FSH, and TSH. That means the gonadotrophins and TSH are similar with this alpha subunit, whereas the beta subunit is what which makes it specific and specific for the receptor binding as well as for the biological activity. Okay, so beta unit is little different. Pulsatile secretion increases in the evening and peaks during the midnight. Okay, so this is how TSH synthesis happens. Coming to the regulation of TSH, very simple, a part of what we already saw. T3, T4 will inhibit its synthesis, whereas TRH, that is thyrotropin releasing hormone, is going to stimulate it. Okay, so a part of regulation of thyroid hormones we saw, we have just put up here. So TSH is stimulated by TRH and inhibited by free T3 and T4. How does this TSH acts? So you know TSH, all anterior pituitary hormones, we give the example that it is a peptide hormone. So if it is a peptide hormone, it is hydrophilic, that is, it can't cross the plasma membrane, right? So the receptor, that is, what is the receptor here? What is the target organ for TSH? Target organ is the thyroid gland. Okay, it acts on the thyroid gland. So in the thyroid gland, the follicular cells must be having this TSH receptors. So the mechanism of action, similar to peptide hormone, acts on surface receptors of thyroid follicular cells via the G proteins producing cyclic AMP pathway. Okay. So for all anterior pituitary hormones, this is the mechanism. Now coming to the actions of TSH, very simple. It is the only action is on the thyroid gland. Okay, almost 90% majority. So it stimulates the growth of the thyroid gland. It increases the blood flow to the thyroid gland. It hastens all the steps of thyroid hormone synthesis, storage, and release. So if you know the steps of thyroid hormone synthesis, you can simply say it increases thyroglobulin synthesis, it increases iodine uptake, it increases iodine coupling with the tyrosine, it increases the uh, coupling reaction between DIT and DIT-MIT, and it increases the overall T3, T4 synthesis, secretion, storage, and release. Okay, so this is how. So it is increasing the activity of NIS, that is transporting iodine, iodination of thyroglobulin, conjugation of iodinated tyrosine, endocytosis of iodinated thyroglobulin, proteolysis, that is lysing, breaking down of the T3 and T4 hormones, then secretion of T3 and T4 into the circulation. And hyperplasia of thyroid gland, already we told, it stimulates growth of the thyroid gland. Okay, so these are the actions of TSH. So we have completed today's objectives under competency 8.2. So what were our objectives? Describe the functional anatomy of thyroid gland. We have understood it has two lobes, isthmus, the colloid filled follicles, the follicular cells, and the C cells, parafollicular cells, all that. Colloid is the place where the synthesis happens. Structure, we have understood the thyroid hormone biosynthesis stepwise, how it is transported in the bound form, free form, how it is metabolized in the liver. Then we have understood the role of iodine, the minimum requirement, excess and decrease also causing problems. We have described the regulation of thyroid hormones based on two. One is the iodine, and second, hormonal regulation of thyroid hormones. Lastly, we also learned everything about the TSH, that is thyroid stimulating hormone, how it acts on the thyroid gland to increase all the activity of the thyroid gland and the release of the thyroid hormones. So this was the class for today. Hope you have understood. Please repeat and rewrite all the diagrams and the structure of the T3, T4 and reverse T3. All this should be practiced by writing several times. Okay, so that's for today. We will look into the actions some other class. Thank you.